Take a breath and stay here for a second before you move on. Do not rush this part. If these words reached you today, maybe it is not as random as it looks. Maybe something inside you has been tired, searching, hoping, and trying to understand a feeling you could not fully explain. So pause, think of that person now. See their face clearly in your mind. Notice what changes inside you the moment you do. Maybe your chest gets tight. Maybe your heart softens. Maybe there is warmth, longing, confusion, and a strange sense that this person matters more than they should. Stay with me here because this next part matters. That feeling is not always fantasy. It is not always you being dramatic. Sometimes it is your inner world reacting to a connection that touched something very deep, and that is why it feels so hard to carry. People can laugh at intense feelings when they have never lived through them. But when a certain person reaches places inside you that nobody else could reach, everything changes. Your thoughts change. Your sleep changes. Your sense of time changes. You replay moments. You search for meaning. You wonder if you are imagining signs or if something real is happening beneath the surface. And the hardest part is that this kind of bond rarely arrives in a clean, easy, peaceful way. It usually arrives with questions. It usually arrives with silence. It usually arrives when your heart feels wide open, and your mind is trying its best to stay in control. That is why you are here. Not because you are weak, because this kind of feeling asks more from a person than ordinary attraction ever could. A deep connection does not only bring comfort. A lot of the time it brings exposure first. It shows you where you still hurt. It shows you what you fear. It shows you the ways you learned to protect yourself when love once felt uncertain, painful, or out of reach. Many people expect real love to feel like relief from the very first moment. Sometimes it does, but sometimes the strongest connections arrive like weather that shakes the old leaves off your life. They disturb old habits. They uncover old beliefs. They pull hidden pain into the light. Suddenly, the parts of you that stayed asleep for years start waking up. That is why this kind of bond can feel beautiful and exhausting at the same time. One moment it feels like home. The next moment it feels like a storm moving through your chest. Listen carefully, because this explains a lot. The storm is not always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it means something real is touching the places where you still need healing. The masks stop working. The old coping patterns stop feeling safe. The version of you that kept everything neat, guarded, and under control starts breaking open. And yes, that can feel scary, but it can also be the beginning of truth. Because a connection that changes you is not only showing you another person, it is showing you yourself. It is showing you how much you want closeness, how much you fear loss, how much you still need to believe that love can exist without making you betray your own soul. That is why the feeling has stayed with you. It came to wake something up, not just to entertain your heart for a season. Very often, one person in this kind of story becomes the one who reaches, checks, waits, explains, hopes, and tries to hold everything together. The other person becomes the one who goes quiet, pulls back, delays, or seems unsure the moment the feelings become too real. On the surface it looks like one person cares more, and the other does not care enough. But life is usually deeper than that. Sometimes both people care deeply, and both are afraid, just in different ways. One fears being left. The other fears being swallowed. One learned to chase closeness before it disappears. The other learned to create distance before closeness becomes dangerous. One says, "Please do not leave me." The other says, "Please do not come too close." And both voices are shaped by old pain. That is why these connections become so confusing. It is not always a lack of love. Sometimes it is unhealed fear, wearing different faces. The person who gives too much may have learned that love must be earned through patience, sacrifice, and endless understanding. They may feel useful when they are overgiving. They may think if they just love better, harder, longer, the other person will finally feel safe enough to stay. But love should not require self-erasure. It should not demand that you disappear in order to prove your value. And the one who withdraws may have learned that intimacy leads to disappointment, pressure, or loss of freedom. So they step back the second things begin to matter, not because nothing is there, but because too much is there, and they do not know how to hold it. This is where many people get trapped. They keep trying to solve the connection from the outside. They keep looking for the perfect message, the perfect timing, the perfect explanation, the perfect amount of silence, the perfect sign that will finally unlock the whole story. But the real shift almost never starts there. It starts inside, quietly, privately, painfully. It starts when you realize that love should not cost you your center. It starts when you understand that waiting to be chosen can slowly empty a person out. And it starts when you finally ask yourself a question that changes everything. What if the next step is not getting more from them, but returning more to myself? Stay with me, because this is the turning point people miss. The moment you stop making someone else the sun of your emotional world, the whole sky begins to change. Not because you stop caring, not because you become cold, not because you decide none of it mattered. You care, but differently. You feel. But with more ground beneath your feet. You stop reaching from panic. You stop loving from hunger. You stop treating another person's uncertainty as proof that you must work harder to earn peace. And that change matters more than you know. Because people can feel the difference between someone who is asking to be saved and someone who is simply standing in truth. One energy clings, the other breathes. One begs for certainty, the other carries its own calm, and real love has a better chance of growing in calm than it ever does in pressure. This is not a trick, it is not a method, it is not a game. It is what happens when someone begins choosing dignity over desperation, wholeness over obsession, and self-respect over the painful habit of emotional self-abandonment. Do not think the time you spent loving was meaningless. I know that thought comes up. I know there are nights when you look back and wonder if you wasted your heart on a story that never had a future. I know there are moments when the silence hurts so much that it makes everything feel foolish. But love that changes you is never empty, even when the outcome is not clear yet. Every hour you spent hoping taught you something. Every time you had to sit with uncertainty, you learned something about your own limits, needs, and patterns. Every tear showed you what matters to you. Every ache showed you where you are still tender. That does not make the pain pleasant. It just means it was not pointless. Some people shut down the second love becomes difficult. Some turn hard, some turn bitter. Some stop feeling altogether because it seems easier than risking more disappointment. You could have done that too. Maybe part of you wanted to. Maybe part of you still does. But there is also a part of you that stayed open enough to learn, that stayed soft enough to reflect, that stayed honest enough to admit this mattered. And that is not weakness. That is courage in a quiet form. Not loud courage, not dramatic courage, just the kind that keeps a heart human in a world that often rewards emotional distance. So no, your care was not wasted. It shaped you. It deepened you. It stripped away illusions. It made you ask better questions. It pushed you toward truth, even if truth arrived slowly. And sometimes the first purpose of a powerful connection is not union. Sometimes the first purpose is growth. Sometimes it comes to teach you how to stop abandoning yourself while asking someone else to stay. That lesson is not glamorous, but it changes lives, because sooner or later, you begin to see that the deeper issue was never only about whether this person would choose you. The deeper issue was whether you were still choosing yourself while loving them. That is the part many people avoid. It is easier to study someone else's behavior than to sit alone and notice how much of your life has started revolving around one uncertain answer. It is easier to analyze their silence than to ask why your peace depends so heavily on their response. But healing begins there. It begins when you see clearly that your value cannot rise and fall with someone else's availability. Your worth is not a text back. It is not a confession. It is not a promise. It is not a label. It does not grow when they move closer and shrink when they move away. It stays what it is. And the faster you remember that, the lighter your spirit becomes. This next part is important, so really hear it. The strongest love does not ask you to become smaller so it can survive. It does not ask you to wait in emotional darkness while someone else decides whether you are enough. It does not feed on your anxiety. It does not demand that you carry the whole bond on your back while calling that devotion. Real love may ask for patience, yes. It may ask for honesty. It may ask for maturity. But it should never ask for your disappearance. It should never ask you to neglect your own life so completely that your entire identity becomes tied to one possible future. If a connection is meant to grow, it will grow better when both people are learning how to stand fully in themselves. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, but honestly. That is what makes love stable. Not intensity by itself, not chemistry by itself. Stability comes when two people stop asking the other to heal everything and start taking responsibility for their own inner life. So what do you do now? Not in theory, not in some perfect future. What do you do today, tomorrow morning, this week? When the same thoughts come back and your chest starts replaying the old ache, you bring your energy home. That is where it starts. Not as a performance, not as a fake healing routine designed to make somebody notice your absence, not as a trick to pull them closer. You do it because your life deserves your presence again. Ask yourself simple questions. What have I been neglecting? What part of me is tired? What part of me needs comfort, structure, movement, sunlight, friendship, laughter, sleep, beauty, and peace? What did I put on pause while I waited for this story to become clear? Start there. Return to the small things first. Eat better. Rest more. Go outside. Call the friend you kept meaning to call. Make plans you do not cancel just because your mood dropped. Revisit the dream you delayed. Clean the room that started to feel heavy. Walk without checking your phone every 5 minutes. Read something that steadies your mind. Make your life feel lived again. This is not denying your feelings. It is refusing to let your whole world be reduced to them. You can still care and rebuild. You can still miss someone and return to yourself at the same time. That balance is powerful. It changes the emotional climate inside you. Instead of living like an unfinished sentence waiting for someone else to complete it, you begin to feel like a full life that continues to move. Slowly the waiting room feeling begins to fade. Your days stop feeling frozen. Your identity stops hanging on what they will do next. And when that shift becomes real, you carry yourself differently. Your voice changes. Your eyes change. Your choices change. Even your silence changes. Because it no longer comes from helplessness. It comes from groundedness. And people can feel groundedness. They may not always have words for it, but they feel it. There is something unmistakable about a person who has stopped chasing energy that keeps slipping through their hands. There is something calm and powerful about someone who knows how to care deeply without collapsing into fear. That kind of presence is magnetic because it is real. It is not loud. It is not forced. It does not need to convince anyone. And yes, the person on your mind will likely feel that difference too. Not because this is a strategy. Not because you are trying to trigger a reaction, but because the dynamic changes when you stop relating from emptiness. Space opens, pressure drops, truth has room to breathe, and sometimes only then does the other person finally feel what has been there underneath all the noise. Now listen carefully, because this part can free you from a lot of pain. They are not always the villain you imagine in your hardest moments. Hurt can make people look simple. It can make you want a clear story with one person right and one person wrong. But human beings are rarely that neat. Someone can care and still be confused. Someone can feel love and still fear it. Someone can miss you and still not know how to show up well. That does not excuse harmful behavior. It does not mean you should accept endless inconsistency. But it does mean their distance may be about wounds older than you. Many people learned very early that closeness comes with pain. Maybe love once felt unstable. Maybe trust was broken. Maybe tenderness was followed by loss. Maybe being truly seen felt dangerous. So now, when something real appears, the nervous system reacts before the heart can speak clearly. They step back, they stall, They go silent, not always because nothing is there, but because too much is there and it scares them. Still, their healing is not your job. This matters. You can understand someone and still stop carrying what belongs to them. You can have compassion and still keep your boundaries. You can see their fear clearly and still refuse to make their struggle a verdict on your worth. That is maturity. That is emotional strength. It is not hard or cold. It is clean. Their confusion is theirs. Their avoidance is theirs. Their unfinished lessons are theirs. You cannot love someone into readiness if they are still hiding from themselves. You cannot hand them peace they are unwilling to build inside their own life, and if you try, you will drain yourself. So release the burden that was never yours to begin with. Let them face their own truth in their own time. Let your job be simpler. Your job is to remain connected to your dignity. Your job is to protect your peace without closing your heart. Your job is to keep becoming the most honest version of yourself, whether they move closer or not. Because if this story does continue, the version of you that should meet that future is not the exhausted one who spent every day proving love. It is the steady one, the clear one, the one who learned how to love without leaving herself behind. Picture that for a moment. Picture them meeting you again, not as someone worn down by waiting, but as someone fully present in their own light, not empty, not begging, not broken open in the old way, just real, warm, calm, strong, ready for what is true, and no longer available for what keeps hurting. That is the version of you worth protecting. That is the version of you the future needs. Now imagine a different morning than the ones you have known lately. You wake up and something feels strange at first because the heaviness is gone. That old pressure in your chest, the one that lived there so long you almost forgot it was separate from you, is no longer in control. The first thing you notice is space, breath, quiet, not numbness, not emotional shutdown. Peace, the kind that does not have to announce itself. The kind that simply settles over your life because what once felt painfully unresolved has finally found its place. Maybe that future includes this person. Maybe it includes someone who meets you even more clearly. What matters is the feeling of not living in constant emotional suspense anymore. The feeling of not waking up to anxiety disguised as hope. The feeling of not replaying old conversations at 2 in the morning, looking for clues, fearing what silence means, wondering whether you asked for too much by simply wanting honesty. Imagine turning toward love one day and finding steadiness there. No mixed signals, no emotional fog, no inner debate about where you stand, just presence, just choice, just a calm kind of certainty that lets your nervous system unclench at last. This is what so many people truly want, not just romance, rest, safety, clarity, a place where your heart does not have to prepare for impact every day. And when that kind of love arrives, one painful question disappears on its own, the question of whether you are enough. It fades because healthy love does not keep putting your worth on trial. It does not make you audition for belonging. It does not leave you starving for what should be spoken with ease. You feel chosen not because you fought harder, but because the connection itself is finally aligned with truth. That future is not built through obsession. It is built through healing. It is built through two people becoming honest enough to stop letting old wounds run the whole story. It is built when both people begin taking responsibility for the parts of themselves that once created confusion. One learns how to stop abandoning themselves for love. The other learns how to stop running from love the second it becomes real. One learns boundaries. The other learns openness. One learns peace without constant reassurance. The other learns closeness without panic. And when those lessons begin to take root, love has a real chance to become something stable instead of something consuming. This is why the middle chapter feels so hard. The middle chapter is messy. It gives you no clean map. It rarely gives you quick answers. It asks you to keep growing while the outcome is still unclear. That is difficult. It can feel unfair. It can feel like nothing is happening at all. But some of the most important work in life happens in silence, under the surface, where nobody applauds and no obvious progress can be seen. Roots grow quietly, so does inner strength, so does self-trust, so does the ability to remain soft without becoming self-destructive. If you are in that middle chapter now, do not let the fog convince you there is no path. Keep going. Keep returning to what steadies you. Keep making choices that future you will thank you for. Choose peace over panic when you can. Choose honesty over fantasy. Choose routines that support your body. Choose thoughts that do not keep humiliating your spirit. Choose people who remind you who you are outside of this ache. And when you fail some days, begin again. That counts too. Progress in matters of the heart is rarely clean. It still matters. Many people quit on themselves during this stage. Not because they are weak, but because the waiting becomes so loud that they forget they are still allowed to live. Do not make that mistake. Please hear this part all the way through. Your life is still happening now, not after someone sends a message, not after they confess what they feel, not after the story becomes easy to explain. Now, in this season, in these ordinary mornings and tired evenings and small decisions nobody else sees, your life is still asking for you. Your gifts are still here. Your joy is still possible. Your friendships still matter. Your body still needs care. Your future still deserves effort. Do not hand all of that over to uncertainty. Let love be part of your life, not the prison around it. Let care exist, but do not let it consume every room in your mind. There is a big difference between holding someone in your heart and building your whole identity around whether they return. One is human. The other slowly destroys peace. So widen your world again. Say yes to invitations. Learn something new. Create something. Travel if you can. Change your environment. Move your body until your thoughts loosen their grip. Let beauty back in. Let music back in. Let laughter interrupt the heaviness now and then. None of this betrays the depth of what you feel. It strengthens you enough to carry it differently. And if this message found you at exactly the right time, take that seriously. Maybe this is the moment you stop staring at the closed door and start noticing the rest of the house. Maybe this is the moment you stop asking why they have not chosen yet and start asking how you can choose yourself more honestly today. That question alone can begin changing the whole direction of your story. The truth is, when you become deeply rooted in yourself, you stop being easy to shake. You still feel, you still care, you still have tender days. But you are no longer thrown into chaos every time the external situation changes. Their silence does not erase you. Their confusion does not define you. Their fear does not become your identity. That is freedom. And ironically, that freedom often creates the exact emotional environment that real love needs. Because love cannot grow well where one person is drowning in fear and the other is suffocating under pressure. It grows where truth can breathe. It grows where both people are allowed to be honest. It grows where self-respect is stronger than emotional panic. So if you want to know what needs to happen first before any destined connection can truly become what it was meant to be, this is it. You must return to yourself, fully, not halfway, not as a tactic, as a way of living. You must become someone who can hold love without losing your own center. Someone who can hope without worshipping uncertainty. Someone who can care without collapsing. Someone who knows that a meaningful bond should add to life, not reduce life to constant emotional survival. And once that shift begins, everything looks different. You see more clearly. You choose more wisely. You stop calling pain destiny just because the feelings are strong. You stop confusing longing with proof. You become available for something real, whether it comes through this person or through a new path you cannot yet imagine. That is the hidden gift in all of this. You are not only being led toward a person, you are being led toward a stronger self. And that self will never regret learning how to live from truth instead of fear. So keep going, but go forward in the right way. Keep your heart open, but keep your feet on the ground. Keep believing in real love, but stop feeding stories that ask you to disappear inside them. If this connection is meant to grow, It will not require you to break yourself to keep it alive. It will ask you to show up honestly. It will ask you to stay real. It will ask you to trust what is peaceful, not only what is intense. And if this connection is not the final place your heart belongs, then all the work you are doing now is still preparing you for something better than confusion, something steadier than guessing, something warmer than waiting. One day you may look back at this exact chapter and realize it was never only about another person. It was about the moment your soul got tired of living on emotional scraps. It was about the moment you learned that being deeply loving and being deeply self-respecting can exist in the same life. It was about the moment you stopped asking, "Will they choose me?" and started living like someone who already knows they are worthy of clear, mutual, healthy love. That is where the story changes. Maybe quietly, maybe slowly, but truly. And if you needed a sign to stop shrinking your life around uncertainty, let this be it. If you needed a reminder that your heart deserves peace, let this be it. If you needed permission to care and still come back to yourself, let this be it. Stay with that. Return to it often. Because the moment you stop chasing from fear and start living from wholeness, you make room for the kind of love that does not have to be forced. And sometimes, exactly then, what belongs in your life finally finds a clear way to reach you.